Nope. Of course something else has to go wrong. Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears, where we love doing things twice. As you can see here, I've got my Prelude apart again. And that was because when we started it up last time and drove it around, we heard a very noisy valve. And so I decided I needed to take another pass at this. The last time that I did the valve adjustment, I actually was using these. Here, let me show you. These crappy Imperial and metric combo feelers, and they just weren't all that accurate. They were sort of close to the metric specifications, but they were not quite. So I was able to get what I thought was a half decent adjustment, but really I was way off. So I actually got real metric feeler gauges. These are actually, I believe, from China, from Great Wall Measuring Tool Company Limited. I'm assuming that's China, Great Wall and all, but it's metric, real actual metric. And I am using that to do the valve adjustment again on my Prelude, and wow, I was way off last time around. Let's go take a look. I've already done 2 valves so far. I've done 1 and 3. I'm on number 4, and I think I found the noisy valve. Okay, so I got it positioned for the adjustment for number 4, which is both of these marks are facing the front of the engine. This engine is tilted back about 15 degrees, so it is actually very tricky to find the correct spot. But anyway, we are on number 4. It's ready to be adjusted. You see that one? Yeah, it's okay. That one's pretty close. That one's pretty close. And oh boy. Do you think that was my noisy valve? I think that was my noisy valve. So we're going to go tighten this up and see what we get when we start the car back up. All right, now it's time to start this car up and see what I screwed up. Hey, it worked! It worked the first time, too! Just kidding. It didn't work the first time. The first time, actually, the alternator belt was squealing, so I had to go back and adjust it for the 4th time. But it starts up and runs, sounds great now. Listen to this. We've got oil. Shit. Okay. Nope. Of course something else has to go wrong. Looks like I either did not seat the valve cover gasket correctly, or I did not tighten it down enough, because I've got some leaking here. All right. Back to it. The valve cover gasket's pinched. Right here. This is great. I love this. Okay, well, the situation here is that after I did the valve adjustment, I tried to put the valve cover back in. The valve cover gasket slipped, and slipped in a place that I couldn't really see. So I tightened it down, and now it's pinched. I know in theory, you're supposed to be able to use rubber gaskets, especially if you haven't put any miles on it. But in practice, I guess that just doesn't always work out. So I'm going to go ahead and order a new gasket so that I know for sure it's cheap insurance, it's not going to leak, and I'm going to be happy with this car when I put it back on the road, rather than be miserable and be dealing with something that I have to keep screwing around with. It's worth the 10 bucks. It's a long time coming, but I finally got the Prelude back together. Next thing I gotta do is drive it. If you remember my last video when I drove the Prelude, you remember the valves were a little bit noisy, and it turned out to be the valve lash on the number 4 cylinder. It's also a good thing that I took the valve cover off, because it gave me a chance to adjust the intake valve lash. They were a little bit out of adjustment. It wasn't anything too crazy, but now the car sounds great. So let's go out on a test drive for real this time, and hopefully I'm not disappointed. I also seem to have fixed the belt squeal. Sounds really good so far. The reason why I was so excited to do the valve adjustment this second time around was because I got those metric feeler gauges, and that gave me the ability to very precisely calibrate the valve lash to the factory specification. Also, my standard metric combo was a pretty cheap set, so it really probably wasn't as accurate as it should have been. And also, you don't really get the precision of, 0.08 or 0.002 or whatever it is. You get something somewhat close. So really, you're never able to get it dead on to the specification. I made it a little tight. Not like, I adjusted it to the minimum value instead of the maximum value, because I had been told by some Honda certified techs that that's generally what they do. I'm smelling oil, so hopefully I'm not leaking, but we'll find that out too in just a few minutes. That could just have been oil that leaked out when I was working on it. But also, my valve cover gasket, after I did the adjustment, was slipping. It had slipped when I put it on, so I just threw that one out and bought a brand new one. And I had a really good feeling about this one, so hopefully it was a good feeling. Hopefully I was right to feel that. Oh yeah, really smooth. Really smooth. I don't have that exhaust valve spitting, like that backfiring that everybody loves. I don't know why people do that. I don't know why people want to detonate fuel in their exhaust systems. To me, that sounds like burned valves. But I guess to each his own. If you don't plan to keep your car more than 30,000 miles, that's more power to you. But my car has almost 300,000, and I think the way I take care of it has a lot to do with that. And also, it's just a good quality car. This car's really starting to feel like it runs like it should. There's a little bit more work I have to do to the cooling system. There's just a couple of lines I have to replace in the back of the motor. But I don't know. I haven't decided if I'm going to try to build the H22 before those lines burst, or if I go through the trouble of removing the intake manifold and replacing all of those gaskets again. It's been, I don't know, 15 years since I've done that kind of work on this car. so good. I think another reason why this car has lasted so long is that I try not to rev it up to redline. Even when I get on it, the redline's 6750, and I try not to go past 6 because there's really no power after 6 anyway. Great. You can really feel and hear where this car has its peak power, and it's right around actually about 4,800 RPM getting into 5 because the secondaries on the intake open up. It's kind of like the, you could say it's the prelude to VTEC. Haha, haha. But it really was kind of an experimental design where there's a secondary butterfly plate that opens up at high RPMs to give the car more air. And it was really after they did this that they started to do VTEC, which was this, whole secondary cam profile. I'm so happy with the work that I did to this car. You have something for as long as I've had this car, really anything. It's either because you love it or you don't care about it and it's just been sitting in a drawer. With how much I've been through with this car, I mean, I've moved probably 15 times in my life with this car. And literally moving. I had to take my passenger seat out to move a refrigerator once, a mini fridge, because that's what I was living out of at the time. I moved 6 times in 1 year because either roommate situations, financial situations, the house was getting sold, whatnot, and and I mainly use this car to move everything I own. Every girlfriend I've ever had, I've taken driving in this car. And this has been the car that when I roll up to her house, this is, they always become acutely aware that this car is a part of my life and a part of my existence. And some people don't respond to that very well. You're really lucky with my wife because not only does she put up with it, but she encourages and enables me to do this because she knows that it's something that I enjoy doing, something that actually relaxes me. I'm not a very relaxed person. I'm actually very tightly wound, and when I get into working on a car, I do it with an intensity, but it really does relax me. It really does. I feel so good when I put as much work as I did into this car, and I could take it out, and it just came out perfect, exactly the way I wanted. Not perfect. This car is far from perfect, and now, even though my garage is far from done, it's barely usable, and it's kind of a ticking time bomb. I need to get that thing waterproof before the winter. But even still, I've been able to get so much satisfaction out of it. I've been able to get so much joy out of this project that I really suffered. I've really suffered through. I mean, this garage project nearly ruined my life. And I put a lot of trust into someone that took advantage of that trust and my goals in life are suffering dramatically as a result of that. And it was my decision. I mean, yes, it's that person's fault, but I can't talk about the details, but let's just say that I could have done more to protect myself. I could have, and I should have, and next time I definitely will. And you know, if you're watching this, just know, I mean, the best advice I can give without giving away too many details is that when it comes to something, when it comes to money, do everything you can to protect yourself. Do everything you can to protect yourself. And always assume the worst case scenario. Think about all of the ways something can go wrong. Think of all of the ways that this thing that you're spending money on will be a regret, and plan for it. Because that's the only way you're going to get out of this with not only your integrity as a human being, but also with as much money as possible. You know, you need to protect your losses. And assume that everything you put in, you're never going to see again. And you need to be okay with that before you take a risk. And just like investing, construction is a risk. Cars is a huge risk. Like you've learned from my Miata videos. Assume that everything is broken. Assume everything is wrong. Assume that this is going to take everything you have. Think of all of the ways that the car you're buying, that the house you're building, that the stock you're investing in could take your money, and plan for that. Plan for that. And make sure you take that into account before you make any decisions. This car is one of those times where I put money into something and I came out on top. Bought this car for $4,500 in 2002, and I've probably put 15-20 grand into it over the years. But not only has it driven me around 200,000 miles, but I get so much satisfaction out of it, so much joy in driving it, and this car is a part of my identity. You know, everyone has their price, but the price it would cost for me to give up this car is more than anyone in their right minds would pay for it. And even then, I'd be giving up a piece of my soul. Like, this really is an example of what I can do, of what I am capable of if I give a damn. So my experiences with this car and you know, just looking at this car is an inspiration for me to do other things, to take on bigger projects like you're seeing me do with the Miata. I had to work on this car before I started working on that one. And now the Miata is going to prepare me for bigger projects from there. After the Miata, I'd like to work on the Maverick. And then once the Maverick will be a challenge, not because it's hard to work on, but because there's a little bit of custom work. Maverick will be a challenge, not because it's hard to work on, but because there's a little bit of custom work involved. And the car is in such a condition that I have to be careful. Like this car, I can screw something up and no big deal, I'll just bend it back. But the Maverick has the original paint, original everything. So if I screw it up, I'm actually kind of like losing something that I could never get back, and that is time. That's 50 years of this car's existence. So once I finish that challenge, then I kind of combine it all together for the Studebaker. All right, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for watching, and thanks for coming out on this drive with me.